Whoa, hey! It's Halloween again! Whoa! I'm sure you all know what this means. It means it's the prime time to do stuff of the spooky variety. Sadly, this year I can't do my yearly rewatch of Over the Garden Wall because HBO decided that we can't have nice things and took it out of their catalog. So I guess I'm just going to talk and play some more horror games for you fine internet folk. Yeah, I'm doing the same video as last year. Bite me. Though this time it's going to be a teeny tiny bit different. Last year I went over what were the scariest games, going from what I thought was the least spooky to the most pen-shitting terrifying in some sort of unconventional casual ranking with the worst, most awkward jokes sprinkled throughout. But this year I'm going to be more academical with this. Maybe I'll even use the scientific method while I'm at it. This year, the goal of this video is going to be answering a pretty big question. What makes a game scary? Like, sure, there are a lot of horror games out there, but there are very few and far between truly scary games. Games that either have you glued to the screen in some sort of morbid curiosity as you venture deeper into it. Games whose lore or monsters linger in your mind long after you've closed the game tab or shut off the console. Or simply put, games that truly freak you out and give you the creeps. And to find that out, as academic as a music major can truly get, I'll be breaking it down to 5 elements that I believe contribute to making a game truly scary, explaining the why and how with my extremely limited knowledge of psychology and game design, as well as demonstrating these elements with some games I've chosen which I think best represent each of them. So, without any further ado, let's start. Oh, and make sure to stick by the end. I've got a bit of an announcement to do. Admit it, you probably saw this coming even before you clicked on this video. The fear of the unknown is an essential part to horror of any kind. Movies, books, games. It's the reason why we've been so afraid of the dark ever since the caveman days, and it's also the reason why you were so hesitant to go and take a piss in the middle of the night when you were a kid. Because during the day that hallway probably looked normal, but at night it's completely different. It's no man's land. Both Slenderman and Freddy Fazbear are probably out there in the dark, waiting to kill you. Fear of the unknown, in a game, is achieved when we're alluded to some sort of danger or disturbing activity, but never revealed anything about it beyond that. That alone, just being told, hey buddy, you're not really alone. That is way better than getting a 30-second cinematic of the monster/killer messing someone up. It allows your mind to go straight towards the worst case scenarios. Worst case scenarios you think about. This is an amazing thing for both you and the writers, because it means you get more scared and the writers have to do less work. This way, the game does become slightly personalized, like in those creepypastas up until you face the monster. Because you run off of your worst fears and what makes you ick as a person. You're giving your imagination the liberty to piece together small clues and hints into the worst, most deprived combinations you can muster. A game that does not follow this example is, I guess, Outlast. It's not the fact that it tells us anything about the berries inmates will be running away from. In fact, showing us these hideously deformed people and just saying, hey, that guy's bad. You don't want to be with that guy. Is actually a good example of what I've been preaching in this section. But the issue arises when we're shown what they're capable of. Or when we're chased by the same baddie 3 times in a row. Because by then, we're used to the enemy character, and getting comfortable with an enemy patrolling in a horror game is pretty much the worst thing that can happen, because then it loses all the tension of what made the game scary and interesting and, fun. But a game that does demonstrate this is a little unique indie piece called Domovoy. In this game, you don't play as some hardened gunner or some average Joe stuck in a creepy place. No. You play as a Roomba. Your goal is to collect dust particles. Yes, That's it. The cool thing about this game is how you perceive the world. You do so through your advanced LiDAR scanner. Pressing space scans the environment around you, creating a 3D snapshot for you to explore. The interesting thing about this is you're not seeing a video, just a frozen frame in time. As the events in the game become more and more interestingly scary, you're only left with the snapshots to piece together what's actually going on, which is very little to go off of and allows your mind to fill in the blanks. You know, like I've been saying. Now, once you're properly spooked by the things your mind has made up and you actually come face to face with your perpetrator, now it's no longer about when you're going to face the beast. Now it's about what you're gonna do now that you're in its presence. What happens in games and also in real life is that you can either stand your ground and confront said thing, or run away and hide like a wimp. This is called the fight or flight response, and it's a thing in our tiny little pea brains which, when triggered, negates all kind of rational thought, instead resorting to the good old reliable caveman mentality of bunk with big stick or run to cave. And the answer may vary depending on the game, and maybe even where you are in the game. This mainly applies to survival horror games. Games like Monstrum or Outlast work more as hide-and-seek simulators, granny-likes if you will, rather than horror experiences. Simply because of how many times you're hunted in this game by creatures of dubious intention.
What a nice guy. Oh, hey, that's not very nice of you. We can sort this out.
Though in Monstrum the whole game is just solving puzzles around the area while avoiding the patrolling monster. It's way more of a granny-like than Outlast, which, you know, has more than one area and actually follows a story. This also brings up another thing that can be an issue if you don't do it right: resource management. Games like, well, most famously the Resident Evil franchise can go from horror to a nice little game of Tetris as you're trying to jam all the cool things you find in your limited inventory space. But the devs, they made it so you can't have both your guns and all of your key/herbs. You're gonna have to leave something behind to pick up later or while backtracking. Now, you'll say, this is a bit pretentious, Roth. How can me leaving some non-essential item 3 rooms behind make the game more scary? And I have to answer, touche, but you'll have to remind yourself of where you left that item. And you know, maybe you won't leave behind the most expendable item and you'll have to backtrack through those creepy holes yet again, with the chance that anything could pop up while you're walking. Now, I did say creepy holes now, didn't I? I guess that serves as a fantastic segue to talk about this. This and the next element go hand in hand, and they can either make or break any horror experience. Through sight is how we perceive a good 95% of the world that surrounds us, and that includes games, of course. This can be advantageous for any kind of dev that wants to confuse players from the get-go. Just obscure the graphics so now players have to go through another layer of trying to figure stuff out and get uneasy while doing it. Of course, back then game devs had what they had to work with. Graphics weren't as refined as they are now. But now there's a bit of a divergence in horror games where AAA games have photorealistic graphics, which allows for more detailed and messed up designs, while indie devs have instead decided to embrace those old voxel PS1-esque graphics, making the games look rougher and leaving more of the enemy's design up to the player, which, of course, ties back to the fear of the unknown. We may see some slashes of red and a deformed cluster of pixels to signify a head in a game, but God knows how that's actually meant to look, what the character you're playing as must be witnessing. So I'd say, if done right, this could heighten the horror factor and definitely help with the atmosphere. It also helps give the game a bit of an identity beyond photorealistic horror game number 965.
And one of the great things about having a fully dynamic game engine is all of this just works.
It's an artistic decision over a pledge to fidelity and realism, and 9 times out of 10, it works. It really, really works. Now, when it comes to a game that demonstrates this, oh god, there's too many to choose from, but I want to highlight 2 games, Uncanny Valley and Darkwood. Uncanny Valley is an often overlooked horror title that I simply think is awesome. It has a foreboding atmosphere from the start, and once things go tits up, it shows. The creature designs are absolutely terrifying with a sickening color palette and disgusting sounds. Not even bringing up the story because this game is such a treat you absolutely deserve to play it yourself blindly. Don't let me, the video game YouTube man, tell you all about it. And then you have Darkwood, the game I so proudly proclaimed was the scariest game last year. I have to say that opinion still stands, because it does everything I'm listing in this game wonderfully, but I want to give a huge shout out to the visuals in this game, because they are great. In the main mode of the game, we see everything from a top-down perspective, which doesn't reveal a lot and leaves much up to the imagination. Again, refer back to Fear of the Unknown. But once we do actually enter dialogue with the very few NPCs that don't try to actively kill us, they all look twisted and rotten like they've been bested by some fungi or something. It really ends up freaking you out, and god, some designs, they linger in your mind long after you've closed the game. Now, I did say visuals work in tandem with something else, right? Well, if you haven't guessed it yet, I'll tell you. Visuals go hand in hand with... This is the underdog of horror games. It's a deal breaker if it's done badly. And it's not given enough praise if done correctly. Usually talking more about the graphics or the atmosphere, instead of actually giving audio design the respect it actually deserves. Sound is the backbone to any worthwhile horror experience, from movies to creepypasta ratings. There's a reason why some sounds are way spookier in the dark compared to when the sun is shining. You have confirmation that something has happened nearby, possibly caused by something you know is there, and that's all you know of said thing. It all ties back to the fear of the unknown, actually. Curious. But sound without an image can be pretty scary. If I leave you here, in the dark, and then play some creepy ambience, or maybe even some things, monotone sound effects, a thing you probably hear on a day-to-day basis, you might be a bit freaked out. Just slightly. But that just proves my point. Sound is a big factor in horror. But you could say, but Roth, isn't that just atmosphere? To which I have to respond, no. Atmosphere refers more to the synergy of terrific visuals and incredible sound. The atmosphere in Amnesia: The Dark Descent, creepy oil lamp lit visuals, and a soundtrack that gives you a feeling of dread. But at this point I'm just rambling like a madman. Let's get back on topic, shall we? Like I was saying, sound can hide in tense moments. It can make you feel vulnerable. Or it can be the Punisher altogether. Let's take Five Nights at Freddy's 4 as an example. In this installment of the franchise, you're alone in the darkness of your room. The only way to fend off the nightmarish animatronics is with your flashlight. When you think either Bonnie or Chica are close, all you can do is go to the open door and listen. Very, very carefully. And if you do hear them, you have to close the door until you hear them leave.
Veronica! Open the door, please, Veronica! Open the door!
Otherwise, you'll be jump scared. But it's your fault that it happened, since you didn't listen close enough. And you're punished yet again because, the jump scare is loud, but the sounds you're looking out for aren't, so, boom, sound dynamics. What am I even saying? Another way sound can influence a game is through the soundtrack. Eerie music can really take a good, scary game and make it a masterpiece. Just look at Silent Hill. It's an incredible experience already, but Akira Yamaoka's music really wraps it up in the best way possible. His atonal drones, along with creepy chords and those thick synth pads, are just chef kiss. Another example, though it's a bit far from horror, would be Bloodborne. Not only is the soundtrack very good, but it uses cacophony to its advantage. Clusters of notes that clash against one another and create auditory tension, as these chords have very unpleasant intervals. Now, there are a lot of horror games that really use sound to its advantage, but I want to highlight a specific part of a specific game. That being the introduction to Resident Evil 7. The guest mansion is beyond creepy, pitch black, and most importantly, completely silent, except for you. There are some occasional odd sounds, sure, but those are caused by you. Or are they? The game sneakily places some extra distant muffled sound effects to try and trick your ear. Some extra footsteps when you had already finished walking. Another game that does this is Amnesia, in a very specific level, that being the study. There's not much to this room, just a hallway and some rooms inside it. One of them has a taxidermied dog. Lovely. But once you spend enough time in this area, you hear the barks of the taxidermied dog. And when you go to investigate, they cease. Now that is proper spooky. Alright, 4 out of the 5 elements. Let's finish this. This isn't as talked about as the other 4 elements, but I feel like it deserves to be highlighted. It's the blood of most gameplay loops in horror games. Power dynamics is something that is present in every single piece of fiction ever written. An example of power dynamics inside of a game could be in Mortal Kombat, for example. Let's take Liu Kang's fight against Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat 9. We got Earth's best fighter against the very strong tyrannical emperor who has been basically invading realms for thousands of years. Overwhelming odds for Liu Kang here. Thus, the power dynamics are that Liu Kang has a very overwhelming odds against it, like a huge disadvantage. Meanwhile, Kahn has the upper hand, the high ground. In horror, it's the same thing. It affects any horror game. Where are you? Is there one invincible enemy or a lot of beatable enemies? Can you do something about it? Slow them down? How many bullets do you have? Do you even have weapons? Even something like the clunky gameplay of old games like Silent Hill can be a power dynamic. You move with labored movements that look like they have some weight to them. It takes skill to zigzag and avoid enemies in these games, and your attacks, done with whatever you can find, may be ineffective or just countered by way more able and nimble enemies. Even if you have a gun, you can experience power dynamics. You might have something to defend yourself from the monsters with, sure, but the gun might jam or you just might run out of bullets at the single most inconvenient time. How I love survival horror. Of course, power dynamics are extremely apparent in survival horror, like I've just mentioned. A game like Resident Evil or The Evil Within will have very limited bullets and just resources in general, which means you'll have to either pick your fights wisely or be packing a stack of healing supplies. Or in other games like the aforementioned Outlast, you'll have a valuable resource like your camera taken away. The camera that has a night vision mode, which is practically a necessity because a good 80% of the asylum is pitch black. Fun. A lot of fun. How I love power dynamics. That was a lot of information. Probably my most wordy video yet. Now, how can we digest the past 15 minutes into a coherent thesis? Well, we can start by making a pretty simple realization. A good horror game doesn't exceed in just one of these camps and lack in all the others. A good horror game is like a salad. It's a very healthy mixture of these elements. It makes these 5 components have some kind of symbiotic behavior. Any horror game you might think of or look at or, play, you'll notice it tries its hand at these 5 concepts in one way or another, maybe prioritizing some over others. Now, if it does its job correctly and becomes a good game or not, is up to the developer. But most games, despite how mid they might be, if they make a coherent connection between at least 2 or 3 of these elements, it will make the game be above mediocre and actually pretty good. Munchstrung lacks any semblance of story or power dynamics, and the audio isn't that good either. But it's still a fun game. You're hunted. You have to leave this ship. It's a game that relies on the gameplay alone, and there's nothing wrong with that. On the opposite side, we could talk about Amnesia: Machine for Pigs. Very atmospheric game, incredible visuals, amazing sound effects, and a haunting story. But despite all of these strong points, it has the weakest gameplay loop ever: walking. And solving a puzzle occasionally. Now, before I close this video, I want to do 2 things. First one being to recommend some newer, lesser known horror games really quickly. It's Halloween after all, you guys need some material. So here's a short list of games that I'm gonna be playing this Halloween. First up is Anatomy. There's not much I can say about this game because it's a pretty surreal experience. You'll go around your dark house, collecting tapes that talk about the various organs and their importance in the body. The game mostly focuses on atmosphere and dread. It's one of those slow burn horror games, and it was like €3 last I checked. I'll put the link to the itch.io page in the description along with the other games. Second game I have to show is Endless Blue. What's that? You have nostalgia for the original Resident Evil, but not in the mood to play the remake because what you liked about the original is the fixed point perspective camera, janky movement, and those voxel style character models, and not anything else? Well, I got just the game for you! You've been sent to investigate this underwater research facility where things haven't specifically been going over well. This isn't a full game, it's a demo that takes, give or take, 45 minutes to complete, but don't fret, it's constantly getting work done, polished, and just generally revamping the experience so it's better. Third game, Discover My Body. This might be in a tie with Anatomy for the shortest game on here, but oh god, this game is disgusting. In a good way, I mean. You're basically giving this man an x-ray and things just turn really weird really quickly as let's just say pathogen. A pathogen takes over his body and we see the whole process and it's, This game is the only one that really ties in the whole body horror genre and it's really yucky. No real sense of danger on your part, but oh god, nightmare fuel. Fourth one is Security Booth. This is a game with a very simple premise. You're a guard at a security booth. That's it. Your job is to make sure only the authorized personnel get inside the facility. Now, this being a horror game, it's easier said than done. I personally played the newer Director's Cut version, which adds some content and bumps up the ending count from 2 to 7. So go ahead, have fun with that. And last but definitely not least, is probably the newest game on here, Don't Scream. This is a streamer's dream horror game. The premise? There's no premise. What you have is a map, a photorealistic map of some woods with some landmarks sprawled in between. The fun thing is the gimmick. You have to survive for 18 minutes in this forest, with the timer only ticking down when you move. Pretty simple, right? Well, the game detects your microphone, and if you do anything above a whisper, you lose. So you'll be subjected to randomized scares for almost 20 minutes, with no breaks, no nothing. And the second thing I wanted to do, apart from that list, is to make an announcement. I'm going to be taking a break from YouTube for multiple reasons. First one being that I want to focus on getting good grades and actually getting to the university I want to go to. And the second one being that I want to take this channel up a notch and make better content. And I don't want to do it overtime over a bunch of videos that are good ideas but could be better. So I want the next video after this one to be leagues better. So yeah, you won't be hearing much from me until like May, June. You know, a good 8 months without me. I think you guys can manage. There's better YouTubers out there you can watch in the meantime. I just hope YouTube doesn't make my views tank because of this. Though, on the good side, I might very rarely stream during this whole period though. So make sure you're following me in my socials to know when and where I'll stream. I'll put my socials on the screen right now. Now, with that, I think that's enough for now. I gotta hibernate and study like a good student boy. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Happy Halloween. I've been Roth and you've been great. I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully.